Sponsors for this event are the Dr. Martin Luther King Celebration Committee and the CRA Media Group. The panelists for the Black on Black Crime Solutions will be Dr. Roslyn Osgood, pastor and Broward County School Board member, C. Ron Allen, media specialist and mentor, Asia Haley, educator and speaker, and Kevin Doable, mentor and author. Let's give a warm welcome to the panelists. You are going to learn more about them a little bit later. The Courage to Believe is not just an inspirational book, but it is also a stage play and now a documentary. King Kevin's mission is to create a captivating film to show our teens and young adults how to make successful life decisions in order to avoid going from school to prison, which is a growing epidemic in this country. This film will uplift their spirits to believe that anything is possible with God, given talents that they've been blessed with. Here is how he plans to compile information for this documentary. Kevin will travel to 20 different cities around the country. There were over 1.5 million juvenile arrests in 2012, and it is predicted that 1 in every 3 teenagers will be arrested by the age of 23. The goal of the documentary is to shine a light on America's growing school-to-prison pipeline and to work to develop mechanisms that will allow the youth to be able to circumvent this system by changing their mindsets. For the documentary, he will interview men and women from different churches, prisons, schools, educators and students, a professional National League football athlete, and successful business owners with inspirational stories to tell how they were able to overcome adversities in their lives. The film of this magnitude would not be possible without the generous support of sponsors, community members, and people like you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to King Kevin Doable.
It is an honor and blessing to have you all here today. I know it's Memorial Day weekend. There's a lot of people who are looking forward to a lot of fun in the sun and all that other good stuff, but you all made it here today, so that means a lot. So give yourselves a round of applause. I'd like to thank Dr. Martin Luther King Celebration Committee. Board of Directors is Mr. Wayne for making this possible. He's one of the sponsors. CRA Media Group, Mr. C. Ron Allen, who's one of the panelists, and Mrs. Tony Marshall, who's not here today, but she was a huge help from the infancy stages of this film and the production of it, and just all-around blessings. So I really do appreciate them. Mr. C. Ron was actually my mentor many years ago, and I started mentoring with his program, Knights of Pythagoras Mentoring Network. And they're getting ready to have a field trip to New Orleans, so they're also raising funds to help get the kids outside the ghetto into something positive, you know. And I really love what he's doing, so please support him. And also I'd like to thank the African American Research Library for giving me the opportunity to come back here again to do another event. Another mention of our ancestors, Martin Luther King Jr. himself, Toussaint Louverture, Queen Nzinga, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and the list can go on and on and on. And the reason why I mention them...
Not torn up.
Repeated that turn. Well, you know, there's quite a few of them. We can say Marcus Garvey. We can say Jean-Jacques Dessalines. We can say Dewey Bookman, of course. But I like to honor them because they paved the way for people like us and me to do what I'm doing here today. And believe me, there's been a lot of adversity and trials and tribulations just coming up with the film, especially with the book, with the film. You won't believe it. As a matter of fact, I'm not even supposed to be here today. But I made sure that I was going to sacrifice and do whatever it took to get on this microphone to speak the positive words that our community needs. And this is my time. This is our time. And the reason why I created this documentary, which was actually going to be a movie, but I didn't do the movie because I felt as if I do the movie, because I do believe anything that I speak into existence, that God gave me the power to manifest. But I didn't do the movie due to the fact that I didn't want to glorify myself or my life. I wanted something that can uplift the community. And the more and more I began thinking about the film, the more of a reality it became. with the help of Tony Marshall and C. Ron Allen, we drew up a game plan. And once I started doing the filming, we started filming back in January, late December, early January. And we've done quite a few films already, interviews from Mr. Willie Gary, the prominent attorney, Dr. Osgood, which was a blessing to actually get her to agree to be part of the documentary. I mean, she's a fiery woman. Love her spirit. I've had some people who just got out of prison as a part of the documentary already. I had a friend of mine, he just literally was out of prison on a Monday, and he agreed to do the interview on a Friday. And he didn't even know about it, but he just loved the fact that I wanted to save our teenagers and young adults from the school-to-prison pipeline. Believe it or not, right now, as we stand, between 49 and 51% of the prison population are black. And that is not a coincidence. This is a systematic design system that wants to imprison our youth, especially in the black community. Originally, I wanted to do a multicultural documentary that would address the issues of all cultures. But I couldn't do that. And the only reason was, every time I tried to keep it multicultural, I wasn't getting that multicultural support. It was only through the black community. So regardless of how my intentions were, God had other plans. And my people need me. That's how I see it. They need us. It takes a village to raise a child. There are many young women and young men raising children and their children themselves. So that cycle of fear of how the children are going to eat, where they're going to work, where they're going to live, it all is based on political, social, economic situations. So we must improve the economic system. That's one of the things that I found out. Another thing other than fear that the people I interviewed discussed with me was the fact that they didn't know how they were going to live tomorrow. So they were living for today, only today. So when you have a people, and I'm quite sure this is nationwide, when you have a people that have that sort of mindset that only today matters, tomorrow, you know, there is no tomorrow, then you're going to have people that's not going to love one another like we should. They're going to hate the people around them because of the frustration that they obtain from trying to move forward, but they can't. And I've been in them shoes before. That's why I wrote my book, The Courage to Believe, because I thought of, okay, if I'm going through all these different things, then I can only imagine how many other my brothers and sisters can't accomplish something simple as graduating from high school. So me graduating from college, it was like one of the biggest adversities of my life. I mean, everybody and their mama was trying to stop me from graduating, but due to the support of my parents, or really my mother, rest in peace, and my brothers and sisters, you know, I just couldn't quit, because I understood that once I'm able to accomplish something as getting a degree or starting a business, that I can inspire and uplift everyone else around me. So we have a situation in our hands. We have plenty of young men and women who are jumping into pools 15 deep with no water. So now it's time for us to fill that pool with water of knowledge, love, and understanding. And that is why I created this film, The Courage to Believe. And I would also like to mention one of the things that people like Dr. Amos Wilson, for those of you who don't know who Dr. Amos Wilson is, he is a black psychologist that passed away in the early 90s. He wrote a book called Black on Black Crime, Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. And what's so significant about that book is, coming from a psychological standpoint, he makes everyone understand that if whoever controls your history, and that's one of the hugest problems that we have, our youth, they do not understand their history. They do not understand the glorious history and contributions that our people from Africa, contributions they made to the world. The fact that they don't know that, that means that they don't really understand how powerful they are inside. So all we're left with is a Eurocentric system that teaches them about people like Christopher Columbus. They're still teaching the kids that he discovered America, which is a lie, because there's over 100 pyramids built along the Mississippi River. 100 pyramids with African symbols in those pyramids. And they're still here now. Now they're like mounds, or they demolished them. But if you have African origins here in this country already, and the Indians, the Native Americans, the indigenous red men are already here, how is that he could discover America? So we have these sorts of teachings to our students, and they're not teaching them about Toussaint Louverture. As a matter of fact, if you didn't get a chance to check out the museum exhibit here, they have a Haitian exhibit with wonderful paintings of Toussaint, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the whole Haitian Revolution this whole month, so please check that out. But they weren't taught that. When I was in school, I wasn't taught about Toussaint Louverture or the Haitian Revolution. All I had was 2 sentences about my people. Now, I come from a Haitian descent background, but people ask me where am I from, I tell them I'm from Africa. I do that because it's bigger than Haiti. It's bigger than Jamaica, Bahamas, or Trinidad. We are one. So we must become united, or we continue to be separated. And the way you conquer people, you separate them. So, in hopes of creating a film that will uplift my brothers and sisters, I hope I have done that with this film. And I hope that we also leave here with an action plan or ideas or solutions to solving the black-on-black crime that's become an epidemic in our society. So, welcome to the first annual Black-on-Black Crime Solutions Panel and the Courage to Believe documentary and fundraiser. I hope you all support, and God bless you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Williams. Please forgive me. As you heard, my husband is currently serving 3 years, a mandatory sentence in the Sumter Correctional Institute. Following a road rage case back in 2010. My husband, we are business owners. We've had our business for many years. I want to first say to Mr. Dorville, I want to thank you for inviting me here today to share my story and also to join you in your fight to save our young black men. My son is here with us today, and this is my daughter Alexia. My son is a graduate from Florida A&M with a computer science degree. I know how important it is raising a young black man, and you know, we going through this this journey that we're taking now with my husband being incarcerated. It has not been easy. We feel that my husband was railroaded in this case. And I have been fighting, me and my family, for years now. For the past year and 6 months, my husband has been incarcerated. My husband holds 2 degrees. So it shows you that it doesn't matter. They're putting out educated black men in prison as well. So just as I said, I'm here to join the fight. To save our young black men. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be here today. Thank you.
The way the media projects black males as inherently criminal, and with the way the education system is operating, should we create our own system like our ancestors during the 1930s? For example, the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, our own doctors, stores, schools, lawyers, teachers.
With more than 25 million people unemployed and the actual unemployment rate of blacks in America being over 50%, our economy must turn and produce more jobs for blacks to have a chance of survival. Certainly, I think we need immigration reform. We need to create more jobs, public work jobs, if you will. But even if legislation were approved, I think black people must embrace taking control of our own financial situation. African American churches in our inner cities should undertake significant ventures in community economic development to minister to the temporal as well as the spiritual needs of their communities. Right here in Fort Lauderdale, we have ModCo, which is a shining example. The church with assistance from the federal, from state, local programs, and, if you will, private concerns, can be effective in the urban revitalization. I also think that African American communities need as many African American owned business operating within the community as possible. The greater the number of businesses that exist, the greater the number of channels through which our dollars can be recirculated. Let's face it, every time a dollar is spent within the community, the value of that dollar multiplies the economic foundation of the community, and we can flourish more.
Thank you,
You
brother.
thank you very much. Thank you.
I think I would like to take a different look on that lens on that question, because I don't think it's the way media projects our black males. And I think that a lot of times in our culture, right, we tend to lend the criticism on our opponents, or we tend to give responsibility for where we are as a community to other people. And I would like to say, with social media today and the many outlets that we have to tell our own story, that it's not about media portraying our community as such. I find that many times we have mischaracterized our own community by the stories we have chosen to tell. So how do we charge our community with the media we do have today to use that as an opportunity to shed light on the positive things that are occurring? If you look at Media Takeout or any of those World Star Hip-Hops, that's not CNN telling those stories. That's not MSNBC telling those stories. That is us. That is our people using the lens of what used to be our opponents telling these negative, stereotypical stories of black people. Now we've somehow become our own minstrel show. And I think that when I look at this question, do we need to create our own systems? Yes, I am definitely for black people, and I tend not to use the word African American, because then we divide and splinter ourselves even more. That black people, we do need our own systems, but before we can get our own systems, we need to change our mindset, because those same systems that we set up, we will divide ourselves even between a black brown bag versus a light-skinned bag, or you're AKA and I'm Delta. So until we change our mindset, any systems that we create will only be further used to divide us as a people.
Great question, great answer.
My response to the question is the media do portray black men in a negative way, as well as black women. And a lot of us have bought into that. As a matter of fact, there's a group of us who are elected officials, business owners, former NFL players. We're on a tangent and a mission right now because we're tired of only hearing negative stuff about the 33311. So Mr. Wayne gave you my bio. I'm Dr. Rosalind Osgood, and I'm a proud product of the 33311. And I say that because I want children to know that there are positive things, and there are people who God has elevated in status that come from the 33311, and they have the same opportunity. The media oftentimes portray our people in a negative image. Yesterday I was having a very, very good day, even had a half a day off, went to the spa, came home, even took a nap. At my age, when you can take a nap, it's very important. Woke up and went on my Facebook page and saw this video with this gentleman, this young black man by the name of Mr. Derek Pfeiffer. And Mr. Pfeiffer is on this video, and he's saying how the police is looking for him because this girl has accused him of stabbing her, taking her car, and murdering her 2 children. And he's saying, I didn't do this. I'm the one that's been helping her. I just got out of prison. But if you see this video, it will drive you to tears. He's very inarticulate. He talks about spending time in prison. And he is the picture and voice of a lot of black boys. It convicted my heart, and I began to say, where are the churches? Where are the men ministries? Where are the professional men? What would happen if those men would have gotten involved in the lives of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Small, who I believe were intellectual giants? Their intellect was just challenged in the wrong way. So the media does portray a negative image of our people. And yes, we have to come together. But we have to be willing to grow beyond our own personal biases and understand that in this country, if you are dark-skinned, they see us all in the same lenses and all us together. When we look at the dynamics here in Broward County, and I'm a native of Broward County, we've had a large number of our Jamaican brothers and sisters, our Haitian brothers and sisters, our Bahamian brothers and sisters come to this county. They come with a skill set, in some instances, for work in business that this generation, my generation of African Americans, don't have. I look at this, I know the time when Sis-Trunk was a very valuable business district for black people. You had Dr. Merritt, you had Dr. Morris, you had Benny and Doris, who had the first real black restaurant called the Little Palace. They also had a boutique. Sis-Trunk was a place that as a kid, I was excited about going down Sis-Trunk because in my mind, I could see these famous black people sometimes going in and out of their offices and in and out of their businesses. So it made me proud of my neighborhood and my community, although there were other streets like the one that I grew up on that we call Skid Row. But the role models and the people, the black people that were successful, were people that I could see and put my hands on in the community, and I saw the operation of their success in their businesses on Sis-Trunk. What happened is they wouldn't let a black man on the beach in Damia in the middle 70s, and we rioted. And when we rioted, we burned down Sis-Trunk. And in the rebuilding process of Sis-Trunk, a lot of the properties were bought by people that didn't look like us. So right now I see with the leadership that we've had through late Commissioner Carter Moore, with Commissioner Bobby DuBose, that we're trying to rebuild Sis-Trunk. Not to necessarily be like Las Olas, but to have the same resources, where again, we have somewhere in our community that black businesses, we have the Corn Plaza there. Mr. Corn used to have a very lucrative fashion business, primarily targeting men. So we had a paradigm, we had the riot, and we went away from it. The difference is the older people of color had a commitment to family and a commitment to hard work that was inclusive. Now many of us have benefited from their hard work and sweat and tears, and we're too smart for everybody. We get to a certain place and we forget about the community. You're only successful because you help bring your community up. You help build your community. But we need to have honest dialogue like this, where people of color sit around the table and talk through our differences and our diversities and see how they can come together. When I go out to the swap shop, there are a lot of my Haitian brothers and sisters, Jamaican brothers and sisters that are there with businesses, building businesses and building enterprises. And then there are others that are saying things about them that are inappropriate and unacceptable. Yeah. We need to hear their business accolades. We need to hear how they make the business work, how they become millionaires because they share a place that they live in and don't be a slave to the lender, with 5 or 6 houses. Those are things that we can benefit from. And it is up to us to change our community. People that look like us, they're going to oppress us and continue to get rich off us. So we can sit here, as she was saying, and we can throw the dagger. We can always talk about the opponent, or we can come together and do something about it. I'm convinced that Moses and Pharaoh never had the same God. Moses was about to be second in charge in Pharaoh's palace and all his ownership of everything. But Moses chose to resign that job and lead his people out of there to a better place. And I think
Dr. we have one more minute.
Okay, after we have this conversation, we need to look at doing the same thing.
We ran a little long in that first round, so Kevin, I'm going to give you a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll move on to the next question.
Thank you.
All right, so if you will,
Yes.
respond to the same question.
I love this question of number one because I'm a fan of creating our own system. I mean, in ancient Africa, you know, we were doing our own thing before the Europeans came, before the white dominant society came and took a toll on the continent and drug us over here. It's almost as if we caught a case of social amnesia and forgot about what we went through to get here. Now, those spirits that were interjected into us through castrations, executions, all sorts of violations to our men, women, and children, those spirits are still in us here today. So what I believe that needs to happen, it needs to be some sort of exorcism of those spirits, somehow, some way. Now, is it in charge of the churches to do it? Sure, why not? The simple fact remains that we need to get rid of all of those things that we value. You know, this so-called mirage of the American dream. That is what caused so many of our men to try to achieve things that aren't really there. They don't have that equal opportunity that we supposedly have. So we have to create our own system and allow the money to circulate within our own community. Because in the Jewish community, money exchanges, you know, within their community 8 to 13 times. In a black community, be lucky if that money we get paid, we jump straight to, you know, the white man, the white woman. We need to get that money and support the local businesses, keep them going. Because as we support their businesses, then we're supporting their children to go to school, which is our children, our community. So that is vitally important and it must be understood. And another benefit of having our own system is because you allow the men to protect and provide for the community. They will not protect something that they don't respect. So once we somehow, like Dr. Osgood mentioned, we need to have these dialogues so that we can understand what are the needs of the community. We know the problems. That's why this is called the Black on Black Crime Solutions Panel. We need to just focus on solutions and not on the problem. We need to channel our energy on creating a way to make sure that the money stays within our community. Get our own kids to go to school. Start their own businesses. You know, different enterprises, ideas, writing books and plays. You know, tap into that intellectual creativity that we have that's in us. We have that power. You know, when we were our greatest, we ruled the world because we were able to tap into the right hemisphere of our brain, which means that there was no limit to the physical dimension. So I know that's a little deep for this conversation, but you guys stay tuned because, I mean, we have the power. You know what I'm saying? We have that. We are the power. This is our time. That's why it was very important to me and passionate to make sure that we make this dialogue happen. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. President Barack Obama has had to deal with a tremendous amount of disrespect as a quote-unquote black president. As a leader, he has shown us great poise and character. How do we get around or through the blatant dishonor that black people continue to face today as it relates to the president and being an example to all black and African American people?
It was Adolf Hitler who said, I can only fight for something that I love. Love only what I respect, and respect only what I at least know. Let's face it, if you're not educated, you can't know. It all boils down to your upbringing and a breakdown in our value system. There's not much that can be done to disrespectful adults. Let's face it, they're beyond reform. But with children, it has to start early. Children live what they learn. And when a child learns and hears his parents use the N-word to describe others, it becomes the norm. I've seen very few instances where an adult has stopped to intervene or respond to that kind of disrespect. It just makes me sick of my people when we make excuses for those children. I'm sorry, folks, but it must be said. We raise them to not have any respect. And when God forbids something bad happens, the parents are quick to say, oh, he was such a good boy. They are out of control because we keep making excuses for them, and as parents, we're settling for this behavior. It goes back to the word in Proverbs 22, train a child the way he should grow. Okay? We also can attribute the disrespect, I know we are referring to President Obama, but I'm going to get to that, to rap music today. Now, I don't want to say today's rappers are not educated about black history, but they don't seem to be as aware as rap generations before them.
30 seconds.
Sure. The question
Question is, how do we get
Right,
around
right, right,
through the blatant dishonor
Right.
that black people continue
I
to
had to
show?
get to that. It's a question many Americans seemingly have tried to avoid answering, like the truth they don't want to confront. Does race play a role? Let's face it. Does race play a role in how people view our president? There's a level of disrespect for the office that he serves in. And that occurs in documented, we all have documented at least 10 cases. The woman who pointed the finger at him in front of the reporters, the guy, the senator who called him, who told him he was a liar, and he goes on. That disrespect shown to our president and his position is a bigger indication that America is not yet in a post-racial society. As long as people can be judged by the color of their skin, folks, the problem is not solved.
Okay. All right, Aisha, same question. How do we get through or around the blatant dishonor that black people continue to face today?
I think that we do what our president does. He is never, ever bothered by their disrespect because he knows who he is. Whether they call him president or not does not change the fact of who he is. Whether they respect us as the king and queens that we all know we are does not change the fact of who we are. So for me, I take a stand every day. I choose in how I respond to people. I choose in how I want people to acknowledge me. And so I don't worry about how my colleagues who I work in a very Republican-driven sector treats me, because when I walk in a room, they are not there to validate me. When I walk in a room, I already know who I am. And so as a people, when you have that consciousness of, regardless of how you treat me, I am who I am because God is, it doesn't matter that they blatantly disrespect him, because he doesn't blink and he doesn't shut our eye. He just keeps on being the president, and I'm going to keep on being the king and the queen that I am, regardless of how you treat me.
Thank you. Dr. Arthur?
Well, I agree. We live at a time where I've never seen so much disdain for the office of president, whether it was through the sequestration, when in a private sector job, those people would have been written up and fired for insubordination. Racism is real, and what we must understand is we have to prepare our children to deal with racism, because they will deal with it and they will encounter it. President Obama shows a blatant level, an extreme level of poise. But what we don't talk about is the disrespect and dishonor that comes from us. We are not trained and conditioned to follow the leadership or for somebody black to be in charge. The whole process through slavery, white people are taught not to take orders from us, and we're taught not to take orders from each other. So a lot of times our behavior and our disrespect for the president plays into other people. So we have to start with ourselves. We have to start respecting our black leadership and the leadership. Sometimes I just look at the dynamics of, I can walk in a room with my white colleagues on the school board and how a lot of y'all will respond to them. I'm the one that's going to be fighting for y'all to get what y'all want, but you respond to them in a different way. You can't get past my weave or my heels. You caught up on something stupid when it comes to me, but you respond to them in a certain way. So we have to make sure that we are honoring and respecting our black leaders, that we're leading by examples to hold up their arms and support them, and then we can demand that other people do the same thing.
Same question. How do we get through or around the blatant dishonor that black people continue to face today?
Well, first of all, white America doesn't respect black people because we don't respect ourselves, generally speaking. So with that being said, we need to create a system to where, not even a system, but an educational foundation to where we are in control, an African-centered education, African-centered community centers, across, state of Florida, across the country, across the world, to where we teach our children our own values. We have our own values. We have our own culture. We have our own belief system. So therefore, we need to focus our energy on making sure that the children understand how important they are and how important respect, honor, and love is. Because the opposite of love is fear. So when you have people operating in a mindset of fear, therefore, they would never really have self-respect for themselves and would not have respect for the people around them or authority, people of authority. Mr. President Obama, he knew that he was going to be up against that kind of disrespect. I knew it. I knew it was coming. People that are, local politicians going through it. So when you have a black man at that kind of level, that he was going to, face some fires. But it's all good because he has showed us time and time again that he's a man of poise and a man of character and a man of dignity. So I definitely love watching him giving speeches because, it inspires me to, I wish my mother would have been alive to see him be president, because there's a lot of parents and grandparents who never would have thought that there would be a black president. And look at us now. So the sky's the limit. That's all I say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I can add to all of that, if you don't take anything away from what anyone says here on the panel, you just have to understand all of this is a responsibility. Like, no one owes you anything. So what we progress and what we achieve as a people is your responsibility. There's a blame on both sides. I don't necessarily feel that it's 100% on the black people, because if that was the case, then we would change our own future. Others are responsible, but it's when you ignore that responsibility from others as well as ignoring it from yourselves is when you don't get anywhere. So I just wanted to add that to it. Everyone here is responsible for yourself, honestly. You're born alone, you're going to die alone. If you want something, you just have to go out there and get it, and as a collective community, we're responsible for each other. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. What happens to a child's psychological development that doesn't make sense of identity or what was not taught about their monumental historic contribution? Does this impact their lives in the present and future?
Certainly does. Many people argue that what we call progressive segregation is the only way to reach troubled African American students. Our public schools have failed our students, which is shown in lower graduation rates and our achievement. Given the condition of the urban landscape, our children need to be culturally centered to learn, and they're not. African-centric schools have sprung from the belief that African American students living in a society with a history of racism and stereotypes need a form of socialization that provides them with sociological buffers. We see all across this country, dozens if not more than 100 black-focused schools have existed for decades, and they get rave reviews from students and teachers. From junior K to 12th grade, these schools with black teachers, we talked about it recently, Swahili rituals, and an African-based curriculum have become a popular and seemingly successful way to boost marks and morale among our children. What I find interesting is they start the day with a black history fact, a pledge of pride, and a message based on black old school values of courtesy and respect for others and their elders. So if not charter, I'd have to say African-centric schools.
Okay.
So I am from New York, born and raised in the projects of Yonkers, New York. And growing up, I did not have someone to necessarily tell me the history of my people. However, I was always interested because I saw the way my counterparts would live. And I always questioned, how could a little girl in the project that lived around the corner from Scarsdale, New York, have such a different educational system? And the question is, do you think that it affects a child's psychological development? Yes, because it made me as a little girl wonder, why was I treated differently? It made me question whether or not I was ever worth it. And it wasn't until I came to know myself in God My beads are dropping for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what it just like popped. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That I had a chance to challenge those realities that were right in front of me every day. And so, not to make this a spiritual conversation, but those of us who are Christians, even in the Bible, the reason why the Jewish people know their history and their children know their history, because in Deuteronomy, God told us, make sure your children know the history of your generation and the last generation. And I think that the reason why you see so much happening in the black community and why young people are not standing up, because they don't understand the history. They haven't been told what their great-grandparents went through in order to make sure that we can go to a place that is integrated. And so without knowing the history, you don't know the fight. And if you don't know the fight, you don't protect the memory. And so going back to the Bible, God told the Jewish people, and the reason why you won't ever hear Jewish people, and they tell black people all the time, get over it. You guys should get over slavery. You should get over the things that oppress you. But do we ever tell Jewish people to get over the Holocaust, get over those things that oppress them? Because no, it was written in the Bible. Remember. And so without a child knowing where they came from, we will develop another generation of young people where the mantle is not being passed down. And that's it.
Thank you.
This is my parenting question. This is a clear example of what we have with our children today, of the dynamics of family and parenting being out of line. We have an order that a man should lead and guide his home and his family. And through slavery, it dismantled our family structure as people of color, where it subconsciously taught women of color that they can't trust a man of color to lead them, to guide them, and protect them. So it's a constant thing, even subconsciously. Those of us that are raising boys, we spend a lot of time telling them what to do while we teach our daughters how to think and make decisions, because subconsciously we've been conditioned. So the first thing we have to do is understand that there is an order, and it's an order that way. It was a role for Adam, and it was a role for Eve. She was created to be his helpmeet. When you look up that word in the Bible in the Hebrew, to give what he didn't have, together they would be as one. So when we look at this whole notion of the development of our children, it is me that build my children's self-esteem. My grandma had a 7th grade education. I was a dumb, undesirable kid. But my grandma taught me I was somebody important and somebody special. And no matter how I couldn't read or write, no matter what happened in my life, that seed that my grandmother taught me that I was somebody important and I was somebody special always travails at some point. So we have to believe in who we are as a people, and we have to impart that to our kids. I go into schools today and they talk about how our kids can't do math. And I tell our kids, your people invented math. We were the Ethiopian people in Egypt with the pyramids, with algebra, geometry, and all this stuff. We created this stuff, building the pyramids and all these. So you can't allow somebody to define who you are. But we don't define who we are to our kids. We don't get when James Brown said, we're black and we're proud. That was a prophetic message coming through the words of James Brown. We don't get that. That message and that piece of radical revolution is missing. We're too comfortable. Some of us, quote unquote, think we've made it. So we're not committed to the little children. Many of the children stay home too long. When they get to 1st grade, they're so far behind with not knowing how to read. We can't catch them up in the public school system. We're not designed to catch them up. We're designed to move them from one place to the other. But we keep them home. We don't have the money for daycare. We think they're safe being home with Big Mama who's going to put them in front of the TV all day. So we're not helping them develop at an early age with early child development to move them where we need them to be, to feel like they are empowered and they're somebody special.
Thank you very much.
With the child not knowing their historic contributions to society, it pretty much gives them a disservice, because whoever controls your history controls your present way of thinking. and they control your way of thinking today, then that reflects your future. So it's vitally important that we make sure somehow, some way, and before we leave it today, I want to hear some solutions on how we can create some African-centered educational system within the school system that we have here. Now, it may cost a little too much money to go ahead and create these new centers, but we have libraries, we have churches on every corner, we have schools everywhere. So it has to be somehow, some way that we can stop teaching our children from elementary to college solely on Eurocentric values, because we have our own values. True story, I'm going to say this right quick. Our history didn't start with slavery, you know, but that's what they are taught. We have so much more than, you know, than slavery. So if a student grows up and that's all they know about their history is slavery, then that's all they're really going to think about is, okay, the white man is the dominant, then I'm to be subservient. That's the way life is. No, that is not the case. True story, when I was in college, I did a project on the homie. And once I did that project, the teacher who signed me that country, actually each student was supposed to pick a country in Africa. This was in my African Studies course. And she asked me, what do I know about Haiti? And, you know, I told her what I knew. She said, you don't know nothing. And then, so she said, okay, I picked to do, I believe it was Kenya. But she said, no, you're not going to do Kenya. You're going to do the homie. Then, as I started doing my research, as a matter of fact, I came here to do my research. The first time I ever came here to the library was to do the research on this particular country, which is today Benin. And to find out that the Haitians, my ancestors, came from the homie, and they were warrior kings and queens. So that's why, part of the reason why Haiti became the first independent nation, well, black nation, after the slavery vote, was because they came from a warrior tribe. It was in them, like they knew their history. So it was just right, you know, to go ahead and fight, because that's all they really knew how to do, was to rule and reign. So by them knowing their history, they knew their power. They knew how to tap into it. And that's what we need to do, to come up with a way that we can help our youth tap into their higher conscious level of thinking. Right now we're operating at a low vibration, a low frequency, meaning that animalistic behavior, greed, lust, sex, violence, those are the things that's controlling them. That's the music that's being seen on World Star Hip Hop or Media Cafe. All that stuff is just keeping them at a low vibration instead of on a higher level. And that's what we need to get them on a higher level. So I hope you guys have some questions and answers to that question once we're done with this panel.
Okay, thank you very much. There is a digital divide between the children in the black community and children of other ethnic groups due to their socio-economic situation. How can we close this gap so that there will be more business, money-making opportunities for our youth, so that they would have an incentive to stay off the streets and ultimately out of prison?
Bottom line, it's more than a digital divide. African Americans today are way more educated than they were 30 years ago. In 1979, only 10% of blacks had a bachelor's degree or higher. In 2011, 25% of us have a 4-year degree. Still, we are less likely to find a job in 2013 than the year 1979. Surprisingly, the number of black workers who possess what we call a good job, at least $19 an hour, with health benefits and a retirement plan, has declined. Despite the increase in education over the last 30 years, people, we hear every day economists consistently pushing for blacks to pursue degrees to solidify a comfortable spot on the social and the financial ladder. Theoretically, the more educated blacks become, the more attainable the jobs are. That's theoretically. However, the Center of Economic and Policy Research, they did the study a year ago, which proves the conjecture wrong. Back in 1979, when blacks were considerably less educated, 20.8% were employed. But in 2011, only 19.6% had jobs. African American males are more affected by the troubling statistics because between 1979 and 2011, that number of black men who had jobs dropped 3%. Probably as a result of the evolving views of working women, the number of female workers rose, and, you know, more black men are in prison. But let me share this with you. There's little that we can control, but we can ensure that our children are prepared to play this game. It's nothing more than a game, and we can win it. I think we need to encourage them to pursue studies and careers in science, in technology, electronics, computers, engineering, and medicine. Tell them to study hard, work hard, read everything, and they'll be prepared, even though the playing field will not be level.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I think this is a great question, but I think that there's more than just a digital divide, right? And as my brother said, I think that in order to really answer this question, we have to confront the fact that there's not only a digital divide, there's a resource divide, there's a capital divide, there's a language divide. We live in Florida, and in many of our neighborhoods, especially in Miami where I live, the language divide, the fact that our children are not being taught how to speak another language, right? And so there are, on Fisher Island, there's a new charter school where they're teaching the children Mandarin, right? Spanish is not even the new language, it's Mandarin, and our children are so far behind. And so when I think of this, I think of the fact that we're constantly trying to compare ourselves to our Eurocentric friends. And the truth is they're far behind too. They're not, when you think of this as a global society that we live in, as a people, our European friends are not those that we want to compare ourselves to, because they can't compare to the Asians in this world or any other market. So for me, I think that we need to look at our children globally. I think that there was a study 2 years ago. It was called The Hole in the Wall. And what they would do is they would actually just put a computer in the middle of nowhere land, children who lived in the bush. And these children would teach themselves, and in a matter of 2 weeks, these children who couldn't speak English and the computers were in English would teach themselves to the level of an administrative assistant in the United States by themselves. And so I think as a people, it's also a matter of us believing that our children are capable. It might not be an iMac that we give them, but it might just be a PC computer that we put in the middle of a hood. And it doesn't have to be a teacher to be there. Just give them the resources. So before we think of a digital divide, we need to think of the lack of resources in our community that we're just not pumping into our children that deserve it so much. So,
yeah, thank you.
Digital divide, I have to look at it from a global digital divide, and I agree that it's a lot of factors. It's the factor of technology, it's the factor of language, it's the factor of resources, but we also don't effectively use what we have. Most kids have cell phones, and you can do a lot through your cell phone with apps and learning, and you have access to information that you never had. So there are a lot of things that we do have in place that we don't use. The test that's coming down from the state, all of that stuff is going to have to be done online. So if a kid comes home and there's no internet access, no computer, they're not going to be able to do homework and practice in the way that they should. But a lot of times we have a church right on the end of the street that has a full-fledged computer lab that the kid passed by on the way going home. So I think we could do better with bridging a lot of these divides by collectively using the resources that we do currently have available. That has to be a starting point. And once we do that, then we're able to identify where we need different needs. Teaching at Nova, we have a lot of international business students. They come here, they get the education, they go back to their countries, they invent and they sell it to us. Something wrong with that picture. They come here and get the education, go back to their countries and invent and sell it to us. But our kids today are not thinking about working for somebody for 20 or 30 years to retire. If you start listening at young people, which we don't do a lot, They will tell you about their plans to own businesses, their plans to do this, their plans to do that. They see themselves way beyond where we see them. So as we believe in them, we have to then put a system of structure in place to help it not be a digital divide.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, regarding the resources that we do have, in 2012, black people spent about $900 billion. $900 billion as consumers. In 2014, we are projected to spend $1.3 trillion. So there is resources available. Now, what do we do with those resources? If we were to, instead of satisfying our every need, and to apply that money to building our own jobs, we can create our own jobs. Instead of asking the government or knocking on like 1,000 doors, we can create our own jobs, our own factories, our own production. That's how you get respect on a global scale, is by becoming producers, not just consumers. Because when you're consumers, they know black people. We're just going to spend our money with A, B, C, D, and E, F, G if we have the money. So instead of doing that, let's channel that energy and focus it on something that's going to benefit us. Companies, like I mentioned, factories, there's, shoe companies, car companies. I think they just opened up in Africa, which I'm very happy about, their own car they develop and produce and manufacture. So we can support them, because our brothers and sisters in Africa and all the other black nations, they are watching us to see what we're doing here in America. So instead of spending our money foolishly, let's go ahead and just, I don't know, save, like start some sort of account or something. I don't know. I know there's some big trust issue, which believe me, this is not something new. That's been going on since we've been colonizing in Africa. But if we were to create some sort of bank account or some sort of way we could save the money towards something in new buildings, new houses, investments, so to speak, then we can minimize that digital divide. I make my money online. I'm an internet marketing consultant. I help promote and market businesses. That's how I made my money, despite my criminal background from 15, 20 years ago, which, they still don't allow me to vote. I can't become a teacher. God knows I want to become a history teacher. Well, so I became a self-proclaimed history teacher by using the online and buying my own books. But the thing is, I know there's so much money that can be made online, so what I wanted to do, which I will be doing, I've actually started already, was create some seminars to teach the community how to utilize the internet to promote their businesses, or how to sell different things online, because that's the age we're in today. It's a digital age, so we need to somehow, some way, get more computers, get more teachers, get more grants, whatever the case may be, to support our own ideas and businesses. We have the creativity, it's in us. Most of these designers, they're black. Car designers, they're black. Architects, they're black. Just like she mentioned, we're the ones that created archaeology, astronomy, history, philosophers, the first schools and colleges. I mean, we've done it all, and we could go back to it again. We just cannot give up hope and continue to believe in our youth, because I believe, honestly, and I know this from the energy that I've been getting, the youth don't think that we believe in them. They think that, we look at them as Generation X and there's no future for them. So we need to somehow transform that, so that we can get their minds from the backward state of minds to a forward-thinking state of minds. And that's my answer to the question.
Thank you. Are churches failing to properly use their influence within the black community and reduce the proliferation of black-on-black crime?
Historically, the houses of worship, if you will, have been the place of refuge, respite, and where we learned our values. There's a lot of, let's face it, a lot of churches today that are doing a fine job. But obviously there's a lot more that needs to be done. I think that along with winning souls for the Lord, churches need to be saving lives from being victims of crime.
I think we're tired. I think that communities are tired of waiting for churches to step up to the plate. I think churches are looking for someone to step up to the plate. And I think, are churches failing to properly use their influence within the black community? Yes. But then I would take that a step further, because I think that people of faith are failing to use their power. And just as much power as we give to the Sunday pastor or to the imam or to the rabbi, we have that power within ourselves. And so I don't think that Abraham or Moses waited for the temple to be built in order to go out and to help their people. And I think that we as a community, we need to step up to the plate as people of faith. If the pastor who has that church with the computer lab and arena is not doing anything, we as a people of faith need to demand that that pastor does something. And so I just, I'm an ordained minister, and I love people of faith, but I have come to realize, especially as I continue to seek God for myself, that the church is an establishment that is there to help us, but is not there to save us. The Bible says that we save ourselves. And so I would beg everyone on this last question not to look to the church, because as we see that these are people, we are mere people. And on Sunday mornings, you look at him and you look at her and you say, but help me, save me. And then on Monday, God says, well, what are you doing to save yourself?
Yes.
And so I would just go back and say, I don't think it's the church's responsibility. I think that it is people of faith. And I don't think people are looking for church. People are looking for home. They're heaven on man's earth. And if that comes in a form of a church or a synagogue, as long as they are being sent home, then they will find their peace, their joy, and their love.
Thank you.
I'm going to approach that differently. I'm going to start off, I define church as being a group of people, a community of people with a like interest. So it doesn't matter if it's a Baptist church or if it's a Muslim mass. Yes, churches are failing the community. Churches are supposed to be a driving force and vehicle within our community to help empower us. Whatever the message is we're preaching, whether we're preaching from the Bible or the Quran, it must go from the pulpit to the pavement. It must move beyond the four walls of the environments that we are confined to. It must become live. Faith is an action word, and it's more about what you do than what you say. If I am in any form talking about love and caring and being my brother's keeper, I have to demonstrate that in my actions. Nehemiah gives us a great example of what we should be doing. I believe that God created the world and he purposed community. That's why he put all of us with similarities and differences in the world, that we should come together collectively and make this world a better place. Nehemiah went back. He was an administrator. Ezra was already there preaching as the preacher. But Nehemiah strategically placed the various groups at the points of the gate to rebuild. I think we do most of what we do from a faith-based perspective and as we live from day to day from an individual perspective. I'm only effective in my seat at the school board when I have all of you helping me to look at things differently. You're bringing your gifts and talents to the table, and collectively we address it. I'm on a tangent to match pastors and churches to schools. Not for them to go there and necessarily preach, but for them to go there to be volunteers, to be encouragers, to support, so those kids that don't have dads or moms in the home, now they got surrogates through the church. I believe that historically, especially for people of color, our issues were raised and addressed when we had spiritual leaders. Bob Marley was a spiritual leader. Toussaint L'Ouverture was a spiritual leader. When we had spiritual leaders who took a stand and led us, Dr. King, they were spiritual leaders, and led us and brought the community together where we championed causes to the extent that we demanded change in a way, even if it meant we had to die for it. When I look at the Bible, that's what I see happening. So I think we cannot let the churches off the hook. I'm employed at the church, but I think that churches could do more to work with the community and to allow people to use their gifts and talents so that we can all be better. Faith is an action word. We must move the gospel from the pulpit to the pavement if we're going to be serious about making a difference in the lives of young boys and young girls.
Thank you.
The church that I attend is called the Redeeming Word Christian Center International, which is a phenomenal church, and run by Pastor Ed and Yvette Brinson. Now, Pastor Ed, he's been doing a men's conference to help address the issues of men in the community, and I applaud him for that because it was, very much needed. As a matter of fact, we just had a meeting Monday, and the whole point of him doing that is so that we can speak out our issues, speak out our problems. And there's, most of the men there, some of them are married, but most of them are single or been to prison and jail. So we address those problems. We pray over them and to give them advice, and also they pray over our ideas. He has us all come up to the podium who have an idea or invention and present it to the group. And he also, as a matter of fact, invests in some of those ideas if he believes that, they will be successful.
That's great.
And I love the fact that he's doing that. And also, we have a job seminar to teach people how to create resumes, how to dress appropriately, how to speak articulately about the position that you want, and to also understand that you are your brand. So, is the church failing to use their resources? To some degree, I think so, but I believe our church is doing a fine job in doing that. Now, what we need to do is have this on a larger scale. Somehow connect the churches. Okay, you specialize in this area. Okay, everyone goes to this church on this particular day during the week. Or you specialize in this, let's go ahead and do that. Because there is power in the church. There's a lot of people with money within the church. And it's not all the time the pastor who has the most money. And money is power. And growing up, we were always taught that not to think about money, not to, I guess, what I'm trying to say is not to focus on the power of money, but we are suffering because of that lack of power and the lack of knowledge of what we can do with the money. And that is one of the main reasons why there's so much black on black crime, because if you can employ a young black man or a young black woman, give them an opportunity, give them an option to have a career, give them an option to how they can start a business, and not just go to school to work for someone else, but to actually become an entrepreneur so that they can create jobs for their people. Because these other races, Koreans, Japanese, Jews, Cubans, they're hiring their own people, and that's power in itself. So we need to go ahead and get back into that. And one of the most segregated days of the week is Sundays, because churches are divided based on their cultures, and their races for the most part. So that definitely needs to be addressed as well. And that's all I really have to say. And before I leave off, I have to say the scripture. Because if I don't say the scripture, there's something wrong with me. There's Proverbs 10:22. The blessings of the Lord shall make you rich and add no sorrow. That's it.
If education tells you that there are no problems, in the words of C.M. Carter G. Woodson, we are being miseducated.
I appreciate all of you that are here also to hear this message.
Thank
I would truly like to take your easy on